it was wild. I mean, like all of these memories are flooding back. And during that process, for sure, some things came to mind where I thought, oh boy, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that my uncle said that. I remember him saying that and me thinking that was weird, but not really learning anything else about it. Or I remember my grandmother, which would have been my dad's mom, making a comment once that seemed fairly innocuous until I had some context. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, that's what she meant. So there was a lot of that. But certainly, yeah, no doubt he was my father. I even looked like him.
Welcome to DNA Surprises, a podcast that explores the life-altering world of unexpected DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Alexis Auersalt. This show centers the stories of people who've experienced NPEs, or non-paternal events. In other words, people who've learned that their biological father isn't who they thought he was. We'll also hear from adoptees, donor-conceived people, and the families navigating these discoveries. Get ready to follow the incredible journeys that begin with a simple DNA test. This is DNA Surprises. Papa was a Rolling Stone. It's a tale as old as time and a phrase we've heard more than once on the podcast. But sometimes there's more to the story. Welcome to the season 14 premiere of DNA Surprises. In this week's episode, Patrick shares how taking a 23andMe test out of curiosity led him down an unimaginable road. One that made things make sense while simultaneously upending everything he knew. He shares how he made his discovery, from his initial thoughts to what happened when he finally learned the truth. Patrick also demonstrates a positive, empathetic mindset for everyone involved in his story. Thank you for sharing your story, Patrick.
I'm Patrick. I'm 58 years old, and I live just outside of Toronto, Canada. See, I'm already getting emotional.
That's okay.
For me, it started in about 2015. My wife and I decided to take a DNA test for no other reason than to learn about some hereditary stuff. And if we had the Alzheimer's gene and some other, kind of interesting things. And we did the swab, we sent it in and didn't think much of it, didn't learn anything new. Quite honestly, I had no idea that there was even a DNA relative aspect to this. I don't remember reading about that or ticking a box that consented to that. I had no idea. And I had no reason to think that I would be interested in that whatsoever. I thought I knew all the fish in my bowl and just, kind of put the report away and didn't think much of it. And then 6 years later, in March of 2021, it was Friday, middle of COVID, but must have been a time in COVID where we could move about because I was out getting a massage. And I was a little early for my massage and I was waiting in the waiting room for my therapist to come and get me. And I was checking my phone and I got this email. It said, you have an email from so-and-so through 23andMe and click here to retrieve the email. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I've never seen anything from 23andMe since I did this test. That's a odd thing. But then all of a sudden my massage therapist came out. So I went in and did my massage. I ended up getting home that afternoon around 4:00 or 5:00 and put my computer on and I was sitting at the kitchen counter. I thought, oh yeah, that email, I should go and check that out. Hadn't really thought much of it. Clicked on it and there was this email from a girl who, yeah, this is going to be a lot. I apologize.
That's okay.
I got an email from a girl in Winnipeg. Her name was Christy. And she had been looking for her biological father. And it turns out that her and I shared the same biological father. And I was floored by this. My dad had passed away a year earlier of colon cancer. And it was shocking that my dad could have had another child. I had two older sisters and then myself. And then this new sister would have been, I think she was 6 years younger than me. So it was right in the time when, my family unit was together. So it was scandalous and shocking.
Was your initial reaction like instant acceptance that, yes, my dad must have had an affair? Or did you have denial? Like, what were your thoughts?
I was certainly not in denial. When I clicked on her profile to answer that email, she looked an awful lot like me. Or I would say looked an awful lot like me and my sisters, I thought at the time. So no, I just assumed, the obvious, that holy smokes, my dad had an affair and had another child. As I kind of learned more about her story, it was sort of adding up, the time frame, where she was from. And I knew my dad did a little bit of traveling out west through his job. So it was just, it kind of made sense. And so I started contacting my family right away. I hadn't actually reached out to Christy yet at this point. I contacted my family, and I had the screenshot of her picture, and I passed it around to my two sisters, as I mentioned. I passed it around to them and said, wow, doesn't she look just like us? And their response immediately was, well, she looks like you. And I was like, oh, interesting, and then I remember calling my mom, and my mom was actually very much into DNA stuff. So she was into ancestry. She had done family trees. I remember when I first went on 23andMe and got the report, she was curious and asked for my username and password, and which I gladly shared. So I called my mom and told her the story, and she was a bit dismissive of it. Well, she said, I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so we got off the phone, and I was calling my wife and just kind of talking to whoever would listen. And then I just kept coming back to my mom, and I'm like, my mom reacted a little strange to that. So I called her back, and I just said, hey, Mom, what are we going to do here? I think we need to reach out to this girl. I think she would probably like some answers and would like to talk to us. And she said, Patrick, there's a story there, but we'll wait till, we're together over a bottle of wine. And I, obviously, was not wanting to wait after a statement like that. So I just kind of said, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. And she told me that, that Christy and I likely did share the same father, but it wasn't the father that I thought.
Mm. Wow. So that's a lot to process. You went from maybe thinking something about your dad to now getting this new information. How are you feeling?
I don't remember falling down, but I remember ending up on the floor, literally. And my world just went really dark. It was quite surreal. I mean, I don't remember any part of the conversation after that. I just remember sitting on the kitchen floor, crying like I am now. And my wife had just actually walked in the house at that point, and that's how she found me. So she was, obviously quite concerned. I had really no idea, who I was talking to or what was happening. From that phone call, I literally went down the hall to my bedroom, and I laid in bed, and I don't think I got out of bed until Monday. I literally wouldn't leave the bedroom. It was just a crazy time. The biggest thing for me about it was the fact that I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. And he was a good dad. He went from a bit of a, not a great dad to a fantastic dad when I learned the whole story. So he knew all about this and raised me as his own regardless. But as you can imagine, in a situation like that, it's not, that father-son bond is not going to be the same. And I think I struggled with that my entire life. So my parents ended up getting divorced when I was 11, and I ended up having just, this very strained relationship with my dad. I always had this sense that I didn't belong. I always had this sense that he wasn't proud of me. I never thought he didn't love me. It wasn't that. It was just, I saw the way my friends interacted with their dads, and I saw dads on TV interacting with their TV children, and it wasn't what I had. And I struggled with that a lot of my life. And my dad and I went through periods where we didn't see much of each other. So when he left when I was 11, my sisters are a couple of years older than me. We saw him every Sunday night for dinner, and we did the odd sleepover, but, maybe once or twice a year kind of thing. It wasn't much. So I was really raised by my mom and my two sisters, and my mom remarried shortly after, as did my dad. And yeah, it just kind of was one of those things where I loved my dad, and I always knew he loved me, but there was always just something there that I really couldn't put my finger on.
Did you ever wonder if he was your father, or was it not so far as that, just you didn't have the relationship that maybe you hoped for?
I definitely did not wonder if he was my father. I think that's why it hit me like a ton of bricks. There was just no reason for me to believe anything else. Going back is one of the things from that phone call and sitting on the kitchen floor to laying in bed all weekend, I literally replayed every moment of my life. It was wild. I mean, all these memories are flooding back, and during that process, for sure, some things came to mind where I thought, oh boy, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that my uncle said that. I remember him saying that and me thinking that was weird, but not really learning anything else about it. Or I remember my grandmother, which would have been my dad's mom, making a comment once that seemed fairly innocuous until I had some context. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, that's what she meant. So there was a lot of that. But certainly, yeah, no doubt he was my father. I even looked like him. I would look at pictures and I would think we look alike. I mean, we're both English, so I guess we end up kind of looking the same for that reason. It absolutely floored me, and, basically began a period of my life that I would say has been the most important and impactful and growth period in my life. And it's all been amazing, bittersweet for sure. It's been a process. So from that moment of finding out about my dad and now meeting my new sister, the search now focused on, okay, who's my real dad? Because I actually, now I'm in the same boat as this gal from Winnipeg, and I would like to know who my father is. My mom was not a ton of help. My mom gave me a first name and a little bit of information to go on. Christy's mother had no information, in fact, and disagreed that was the first name. So we were now kind of but my mom was 100% take it to the bank. That's his first name. And she didn't know his last name. She just knew that name. So the search began, and it basically consumed my life. I was, probably 12 hours a day, working on it, thinking about it, online all the time, looking up every single lead I could find, looking in databases. I went on all of the other DNA services that were available to try and match some DNA there. I probably sent out 1,000 emails to people. Anyone that kind of had a match of, 1% or higher got a note from me. And it was a cut and paste note that I, would say, hey, I'm, born in 1968, and this is the area I was born in, and I'm looking for a man. I believe his name is George, and he's probably in his early 80s, and yada, yada, yada. And I would just cut and paste and send and send and send. I think it had to have been about 1,000 emails that I sent, and I got precisely 0 emails back from anybody. I'm not even sure that they made it to them. It was now, approaching, kind of 2 or 3 months later, and I was starting to lose hope. I was thinking, I'm just not going to find out. At this point, I assumed he was dead anyway, so there was nothing about me that wanted to find this person and meet him and have any sort of relationship. I was not even down for that. It was just, I just wanted to know who he was. And I'm a bit of a health nut, and I like to know that sort of thing. So I would have liked to know, hey, is there anything I should be looking out for? And Incidentally, I should mention one of the things with my father is he had died the year before this came out, and he had died of colon cancer. And his brother had died of prostate cancer very young. So I've been living with this kind of fear of colon cancer and prostate cancer, and as such would get a lot of testing, a lot of intrusive testing, because I was really quite worried about this. And so that also became kind of an issue, where I remember saying to my mom once, you could have stopped that. Like, you could have put my mind at ease. And I understand why she didn't, but it was just like, I'd be lying if I said there's never been anger. There certainly isn't anger now at all. And I wouldn't say anger ever led the theme, but there was little bits of it would surface every now and then.
I'm curious, you said that you were not particularly interested in a relationship with this person that you're trying to find, your biological father. Why was that? Was it just, you just wanted the information? Did you feel like even though your relationship with your dad wasn't the best, he was your dad, or what were your feelings there?
Yeah. To me, my dad was my dad. And I think it wasn't that I wasn't open to anything, but it certainly did. I wasn't leading with that. Like, it wasn't I wasn't searching for anything.
Sure.
I was more curious than anything. I would just, here's a man out there who's my father, and who is he? What does he do? What did he do with his life? How did he move through life? Where is he from? Where did he live? Who did he marry? What did he do for work? All of those, just things that would be like, just interesting to me.
Did your mom share a little bit more about the circumstances that she met this person and how your dad came to raise you?
My mom was married with two daughters and just moved from England to Canada with my two sisters who were born in England and my dad. And they, I guess at that point, what happened. And she got pregnant with me. My dad was still in the picture and continued to be in the picture and knew, but decided to, to stick around, and they made that work for 11 more years kind of thing. And then the marriage finally dissolved. So yeah, this is where the story kind of gets interesting. It was May, and I remember it was Masters weekend, and Masters is typically in April, but it had been moved that year due to COVID. I was doing what I would usually do on a Sunday, which is not a lot, and watching golf on TV. And all of a sudden I got a ding on my phone, and it was a new connection from 23andMe. And I thought, oh, that's a can of worms. Last time that happened, my life got turned upside down. I opened up the email, and same thing as before. I had to kind of click through 23andMe, and it was this kid. He was 25 years old, and he lived about 30 minutes from me. And we shared, I want to say 8 or 9% DNA. So it was huge. Like, there was nobody that came close to that kind of amount of DNA other than my half sister. So I immediately reached out to him. I sent him an email. He hadn't emailed me. He had just connected, like a friend request or something, which I thought was a little odd, but I immediately connected with him, and he responded right away. And I just said, hey, same spiel, born in 68. I'm looking for this guy, George. And he responded right back, and he's like, hey, yeah, my mom just reconnected with her biological dad about 10 years ago, and his name's George. And I'm like, oh my God, like, your mom's my half sister. And this is incredible. And I said, hey, here's my phone number. Would you mind sharing this with your mom? I would really, really love to connect with her. She can call me anytime. I just kind of hung back on that. And I was like, wow, this is, all of a sudden now I'm getting somewhere, because she knows George. I know that she knows who he is. So now I'm very close to finding this person. As I'm waiting for his mom, Lori, to call me back, I messaged him one more time, because I didn't even think to ask, is George alive still? And his response was, yeah, George is alive, and he lives in LA, and here's his Facebook profile. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I clicked through on his Facebook profile, and I wasn't a big Facebook person at that time, so I didn't really know how to navigate the system, but I figured out how to send him a message. So I decided to send him a message, and I started writing kind of a longer, heartfelt message. I think, you could be my father, and, I would love to connect and learn a little bit more. And, and I was also said, if this message doesn't land well for whatever reason, no problem. I don't need anything. I just thought you'd want to know I'm here and maybe connect. And then I got off Facebook and started working the phones and calling friends and people and telling them like, hey, I think I found my dad. It was interesting because I went back and forth on Facebook trying to see if I could find more information. And then all of a sudden I found this little button that said photos. And I was like, oh, and I clicked on it and I almost fell off my chair because it was literally me looking back at me. And he even had pictures on his Facebook profile that were publicly available of him when he was the age I was at, looking at these pictures. So it was literally like looking at me. It was to the point where he had dark kind of shaggy hair. I don't know why his hair looked like that, but I sent a screenshot of it to one of my good friends. And his reply was, why are you sending me a picture of you in a wig? And I'm like, it's not me. It's my dad. And yeah, so that was pretty wild. So I did hear back from Lori within a couple of hours. And by, I think 8:00 that night, I was on a FaceTime call with, I want to say 8 people, including him, his wife. I think it turns out there's 8 kids of George, and from 5 different moms. I believe we were all, there might have been one missing from that call, but by Sunday night of the day I found him, we were all on this call and literally from all over the country, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, LA, and then a couple in Ontario. And it was surreal. So I think that call, would have lasted definitely hours. We were on the phone. People were dropping off the call. And then I think at the end, it was just me, Christy, because he had just found out about both of us at the same time, obviously. And he had no idea about either of us. So it wasn't like he knew we existed and he's just been kind of ignoring it. He had no clue. It was back at that was the time. There were no cell phones or email or anything. And he was, turns out a musician and just kind of traveling across Canada, playing music and making babies. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah. What was his reaction? Was he excited? How was your conversation with him?
I don't think he could have been more excited. The craziest thing to me and the most heartwarming thing is his wife was maybe more excited. They'd been married for 40 years. After he's kind of gone through Canada, he made his way down to the US and he built a really great life for himself. And he married a wonderful woman and they had 2 kids. The youngest would have been 35 and the oldest would have been 62. So it's a pretty big gap. And then there's this missing period in between all of our ages that we all kind of scratch our heads every now and then and say, I wonder if there's somebody else. But we think they would have surfaced by now. So we had that Zoom call and then we ended up just my sister and him and his wife on the phone and another hour or 2 just us. And it was literally him just telling stories and we were all ears. He's a pretty interesting guy and he's got a lot of crazy stories and really, really likes to tell them. So that was kind of fun. After that, there was a few conversations and then we had planned to all get together and at least the Canadian siblings did. So there was definitely a bit of a standoffish vibe from the 2 brothers in California. At first, that kind of went away. But at first that there, so that the older siblings, the ones that were in Canada, we all kind of had more in common because we all really didn't have George in our life and they did. But yeah, fast forward to Labor Day weekend, the entire Canadian group of us, which is 6 and spouses all, spent, I think 3 or 4 days together at my house. So they all kind of came to Ontario, or if they were in Ontario, came over, and we just had this crazy weekend together. It was absolutely magical. I still remember like so many like details and conversations and the laughs and it was just amazing. I would say that you put these 6 people in a room that have this magical connection, but zero baggage from the past. There, a couple of them did know each other, but for the most part, like we're all just kind of getting to know each other, but we all look the same. We all laugh the same. We all think the same. We're all very different people for sure. We were all had very different paths in life, but there was just this amazing connection. And we've, since been on a few other trips. So we ended up doing the same thing in Winnipeg at my sister's place. And then we've done a trip to Palm Springs where my California brothers joined, and my dad, and I think 3 or 4 of us went down from Canada. So yeah, it's been great. I'm in California, at least once a year for work. So I've made a point, early on that I would hang with him. But the first time I met him was February of 22. So we hadn't connected live yet. And my sister, Christy, and I decided that we wanted to travel down to meet him. So we did. We spent, I think, 3 days. That was pretty crazy. There was a snowstorm in Winnipeg. So she was actually a day late. And I was kind of struggling because I was like, I really wanted to meet him together, but I can't sit here for I can't wait. Like we have a plan. He's coming over. Like I'm not going to change it. And she was like totally cool with that. And I remember sitting outside the hotel I was staying at in Santa Monica at this little courtyard, and there was this big tall hedge. And I was just sitting out on a table in the courtyard, just kind of watching this little opening in the hedge where he would enter. And I actually recorded it. I had my phone just on, like standing on the table, leaning up against a glass, just because I don't know, I wanted to have it on video.
It was a very special moment. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty wild when he walked around that corner. When I met my sister Christy for the first time, so she came for that Labor Day weekend. She came a few days early, and we went to a baseball game. And that was pretty emotional too, because it was like, we talked on the phone and seen each other, but then to all of a sudden lay eyes on her. Like, and we were in a crowd. We met like actually, outside of the baseball stadium, and to actually lay eyes on her and just like embrace her. It was pretty special.
That's amazing.
And it was the same with my dad when my dad came around the corner, and we just hugged each other and, didn't stop for a while. It was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have a really healthy attitude about this experience. Did you ever have, or did you find out from your brothers who were raised by George what kind of a dad he was? And did you ever have these moments of, what if George had been in my life? Did you ever have those what if thoughts?
No, I didn't, for a couple of reasons. George, and with all respect and love, like I think I dodged a bullet, not
sure. Yeah.
Because at that time anyway in his life, like he was not like, so before he had me, he had 2 sisters and a brother, and he had them very, very young, and his wife and him split up, I think when the kids were all, toddlers. And the kids at that time, it sounds crazy now, but that's kind of the way it went back then, is the kids all went into foster care basically. So those 3 kids got split up. And so they didn't really have much experience with George. They do have some memories for sure. And I think he did, kind of pop in and out of their lives every now and then, but I don't think he was overly involved. And I'd say out of all of us, like those 3, and for good reason, have the toughest time, kind of relating to George at this point. When they all have very different relationships. It's funny, we all 8 of us have very different relationships with him. I try and appreciate everybody's point of view. Chrissy and I have no skin in the game. We just met this guy for the first time. He didn't know about us. So, we've got absolutely nothing against him. But sometimes that's created, a little bit of tension in the group. I think like I said, everyone's got their own kind of experience and relationship But yeah, no, I never wondered what life would be like. I think I had I had a really great childhood. I'd say when I think about my life up until 11, I think things definitely got turned upside down when I was 11, when my dad left. But up until then, I was very happy kid.
You mentioned that your mom doesn't want to talk about George or anything around that. Does she know that you've connected with him? What does she think of you having a relationship with him?
Yeah, so my mom is the saddest part of the story. When it all came out, my mom felt understandably a lot of shame. We tried our best to make her comfortable. I remember, that weekend that I laid in bed all weekend, I asked my wife, "Can you please send my mom some flowers? Just send her some flowers. Tell her I love her." And but I had no capacity to talk to her or to do anything, but I just needed her to know this is fine. And we tried our best to make her feel that, but unfortunately, she just decided to kind of pull back. And so we don't really see much of her anymore, sadly. We invite her to Christmas. I think, I'm not even sure if we did. This might be the first year we didn't. I basically said to my wife, like, I can't, I feel like I'm exposing myself just to be let down every time I invite her somewhere, because I know the answer is no. So I said, let's just stop this, foolishness. So she knows I'm here, and if she wants to reconnect, we would, but there's really not much of a relationship outside of Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, and that's about it.
Was that a sharp turn from before you made this discovery?
I mean, yes and no. It definitely got turned upside down, but it wasn't like I had one of those relationships where we're seeing each other every week and talking on the phone every day. Like, our relationship was, and that's typical, I find, with most of my friends, especially from England and something about England. It's not even Europe, it's England. Just the relationships with parents are a little different sometimes. So I'd say we were as close as I needed to be, and I think we were as close as she needed to be. We spent all our holidays together, and we did lots of things. But yeah, I don't want it this way. I would rather her be part of our lives. I have 2 children and 2 stepchildren, and I would rather that she be part of that. But she's chosen not to, and I understand. I think she, in her mind, she thought she would go to her grave with this secret, and it came out before that, obviously, and it didn't sit well. I remember when she told me, she prefaced everything by, "I'm going to tell you this once, and I never want to talk about it again, and I don't want you telling people." Then I said, "Well, that's absolutely not going to happen." Yeah. I said, I'm not telling people. Like, this is my life, I think she was just embarrassed and ashamed, and it just easier to avoid the situation than be around.
I was so shocked to hear you say that you sent flowers to your mom the weekend that you found out. I think that is an absolute first that I've ever heard on this podcast. And, listeners know that my take on things is definitely one of empathy and compassion for a lot of the mothers in our situation. So I'm really curious, like, in the midst of not being able to get out of bed, dealing with this massive shift in your reality and your foundation, why was it so important to you to make sure that your mom knew that you loved her and cared about her and you wanted to reach out?
Well, I mean, quite simply, I was raised that way, so I think my mom had everything to do with that. I'm an empathetic person for sure. And I do deeply, deeply care about people I love, people in my life. Like I said before, there little bits of anger have popped up, but very, very, very little. Like, and way overshadowed by just like everything's fine, Mom. Like, nobody cares. We tried to convince her of that so many times. I think she was just embarrassed to come around. My in-laws who are here. We have a pretty big family that gathers for pretty much any reason we can think to gather. My mom would have been part of a lot of that. And I just think she didn't want to be around. I know, we grew up in the church, and a lot of her friends from the church, she's kind of distanced herself from, because she knows they know, because we're all on Facebook, and I would post every time I was with my siblings or with my dad, there was a post that went along with it. When I look back, I think, could I have done anything differently? I don't think so. I don't think I would. Even the posting and stuff, to me, this was my life. I really wanted to share my story. I wanted people to know. I wanted everyone to know. And I remember talking to my stepmother, the wife of my dad, and like the first call she got was from my dad's other brother. He had two brothers. One died, that I mentioned, of prostate cancer. The other one was alive and well, living in England, and called her up right away. And like, I just saw this crazy post on Facebook. What's happening? And she's like, "Oh yeah,
they really kept
real.
It secret. They kept it secret.
They kept it. Yeah.
Wow.
Totally.
Wow. What about your sisters, your raised sisters that you grew up with? What do they think of all this?
That's a great question. So I think my two sisters, I was and am very close with one. One I'm just not very close with at all. So our relationship, that we don't really have one, but we really didn't have much of one before. Like, we would see each other, because we got together with my mom and stuff, I'd see her. But now that's not happening. I don't see her either. And no drama, no event that happened. It was just, we just kind of don't have a ton in common, and never really stayed tight. My other sister, who I'm very, very close with, it was hard for her, for sure. I included her in everything. So even that Labor Day weekend, she came. She didn't stay the whole weekend, but she was included in it. But I think she had a hard time. I think, and I understand, like, I think she was a little bit in the middle of my mom and me. And, although there shouldn't have been tension there, I think there was tension that was kind of building, and I don't know why, but I think my sister felt, kind of protective over my mom, and that was fine. And then I think she thought that, maybe I was, getting a little too cozy with this new family. But it was, for me, it was interesting. We were all just getting to know each other. So yeah, we saw a lot of each other. We talked a lot to each other. And I think that definitely rubbed my sister the wrong way. There was no issue, but I think we needed to come back together, and we did. And we're as close as ever now. And incidentally, all of the relationships with all of the people involved have kind of level set now. So it's almost normalized. I think I got what I needed out of everything. I got all of the answers I needed. I went on a whole self-healing pursuit. It was amazing for me. And, a lot of regret for me is that I didn't get to talk to my dad after this came out. There's a lot of things I would have said to him,
Yeah, I bet it gave you such a new perspective and appreciation for him, or appreciation for his point of view and where he was coming from. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, he became a hero. I went from not really thinking about him a whole lot to now I think about him probably more than I ever have, and in a good way. Like, I would just always think happy thoughts and memories, and I have pictures of him on my digital picture frame, and he's my dad to me.
At the beginning, you said that this period of time since you made your discovery has been some of the most profound kind of period of time of your life, and you just touched on kind of a healing journey. What have been the most helpful things in helping you process this and integrate it and accept it?
I think for me, it was just understanding like that there was something. So then it was like, okay, well now I know what it is. Now I can put a label on it. Now I can go and get the help I need to kind of get through the other stuff. So I didn't need therapy to get through this situation. This situation was fine. I was okay to get through it. What it did is it just kind of opened, a whole can of worms where, like I said, I replayed my entire life, and all of these things started falling into place, and all these patterns that I have and the way I feel were just part of me, but they weren't part of me. They were because of these things that had happened or that I had perceived. So that was probably the greatest thing I did, and the greatest gift I gave to myself was going to a place called Hoffman. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Hoffman is it's a retreat, and it's you go for 7 days, and it's a total like unplug, and 15, 16 hours a day of just group work, not therapy. You don't talk about your issues, because the whole thing with Hoffman is we all have childhood trauma, and Hoffman is about addressing childhood trauma. They don't care what it is. The stories are all different. The results are exactly the same. That really changed a lot for me. And then just getting comfortable in my own skin. Like when you go from feeling like you don't belong to understanding why you felt you didn't belong, it's amazing. It just unlocked kind of everything for me. It was like, well, I don't feel this way because I shouldn't belong, or I'm not good enough, or I'm all these things that have fed my mind for all these years. I feel I don't belong because I actually didn't belong.
Yeah.
It was real, and it was subtle, I'm sure. And like I said, I don't remember, like nobody ever told me, and nobody ever made me feel that way, but there would have been something. And that over the years just kind of programmed me to feel that way, that I just wasn't good enough. I remember when I started my business, and I was never meant to be successful. I think most people that knew me when I was 15 years old, including my own parents, would have thought that I wasn't really going to amount to anything. And then I kind of did. And, through that, I think, I used to always think about my dad, and like, he never would really ask me too much about my business, and he never came to visit my office, and, it was just weird to me. It was just like, man, if my kid, especially a kid I didn't think was going to actually achieve anything, did what I did, I would be over the moon. I would be like, how can I help? Roll up my sleeves. Let's go. Like, what can I do to be involved? But he would just had zero interest in it. And that also makes sense to me, like he wouldn't have felt that same level of pride because I'm not his son. So it's just, I get it. And that's not meant in any disparaging way against him. He loved me. I know he did, but I wasn't his son. So that would have informed kind of everything that happened in our relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously we don't know what exactly what he was feeling or thinking, but I imagine still there's probably a lot of hurt and things that were tied into that time in his life. And, even though he made a decision to move forward, we don't know how he felt.
One of the great things about, putting all the pieces together was the music. I never really thought about it that much, but in hindsight, I was like, yeah, why am I the only musical one in the family? Why am I the only one interested in music and playing music, and no one else really is? And then, it turns out my dad is, basically made his living playing music. So that was pretty cool. And just kind of piecing that stuff together. I remember the first time my dad and I connected in California, and when he came over to that hotel, he brought a couple of guitars with him. And I've got this video of him and I just kind of jamming away on these acoustic guitars, and it was magical. Like, it was really, really special.
That's amazing. And yet this is an audio-based podcast, but I'm looking at Patrick, and he's got guitars on the wall behind him. He's got this whole jam room. And so, yeah, I definitely had the thought of, well, that kind of makes sense that George was a musician, right, and so are you.
Yeah. One of the things about being a musician is you would like to write songs and write music. And I've really tried my entire life to write a song, and I've just never been able to. I've read books on it. I've tried countless times to pull together a meaningful song and just couldn't do it. And then throughout all of this situation, probably the best gift I got might have been this, is that I got out of bed one morning while it was all kind of in the thick of it. And I sat on the couch and I picked up my guitar, and this song came out of me, and it was remarkable. And I feverishly wrote down melodies and chords and put lyrics together. It was amazing. I haven't been able to do it since, but I did it. And it's my story basically from beginning to end in a song. And I've recently had it professionally recorded, and it's, on Spotify and everywhere. I couldn't be more proud. And I love sharing it. And,
that's amazing. If you would send me the link I'd be happy to put that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
What advice do you have for a parent who may be keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
Well, yeah, that's quite simple. There are no secrets anymore. So I think gone are the days where you can hope that this will stay under wraps. It won't. And I think it's very, important that you get to have these conversations while you can, and because if you've got a child that you want to say something to and then you die and you don't, and they find out, I think it leaves a lot of open questions, So yeah, based on my experience, I sure wish my mom had told me. I would have loved to have talked to my dad about it. It would have completely changed my relationship with my dad. We still would have had one. We would have had an amazing relationship, if I had have known. And I think it would have been good for my mom too. We could have eased into it together and not had a big dramatic moment. It would have been nice to just kind of talk about this and get it out in the open. But having said that, I completely understand why she didn't. And I get that completely, but I would just say the truth will set you free. This must have been eating away at her all her life. My wife and I talk about it all the time. Like this would have consumed her, like in everything she did, and I truly believe that. So, like anything, any situation, I think the truth definitely will set you free.
And what advice do you have for someone who just uncovered a DNA surprise?
Oh, yeah. I'd say just take it in and try and lead with love and empathy, and don't let anger get in the way of anything, because it will creep in depending on the situation, but it's not useful and not helpful. And I think if you could just have an open mind and try and understand that everybody's got their story and everybody's got their reason. It's not a blame game or an anger thing. It's just, okay, here's our new reality. Let's get into it. What's happening? And I think that's really important. So I think that would be my advice for sure.
Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. What a journey you have been on. I felt like I was riding a roller coaster with you from the beginning, but what a beautiful, ultimately and overall kind of beautiful resolution that you've had in these relationships that you've built, and the compassion that you show your mother. I hope that things just continue to move in a wonderful direction as you build these relationships.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks again to Patrick for sharing his story. If you'd like to listen to Patrick's song, Dark Horse, you can check it out in the show notes. If you have a DNA surprise that you'd like to share, please submit your story at dnasurprises.com. And for early, ad-free access to episodes, join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/DNA Surprises. Until next time. DNA Surprises is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexis Auersalt. It is mixed and mastered by Josh Auersalt of Siren Recording Studios.